We will be.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Australia's best independent news and opinion radio show, The Daily Australian, with Nicola Charles and Jason Olbourne.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Australian. This is Friday, the 13th of June, 2025, episode 111. All those numbers are a bit crazy. Nicola Charles, welcome. Last day of a big week in news, and this one's going to be a monster.
Friday the 13th. It is going to be a monster, so you might have to be prepared to hang in there today because we've got lots of clips and lots of news. It's amazing how days like that happen. You go to bed, you wake up, and oh my God, the sky has fallen in. But what I said, as I said before, is these agitated bees, people have had enough. People are noticing that a few things are stinking, Jason, so it's our duty to report on it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it, what's happening? Obviously, Daniel Andrews is not making any friends in Victoria except for one Anthony Albanese, who's very good at giving himself pay rises. At the same time as he's offside with the United States, he can't get a meeting with Donald Trump. Meanwhile, obviously Trump's very busy, but Albo just looks on the outer. At the same time, we're going to show you a clip a little bit later of Chris Ullman, former political editor for the ABC, coming out against net zero in a very stern way. We have got news from around the world. Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Canadian opposition, who was going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, who miraculously had the biggest turnaround in history to be defeated. Not only his party was defeated against Mark Carney, the globalist, he lost his seat. And in very strange circumstances, Pierre Poilievre, the only way he could get back into Parliament was that somebody would have to resign their seat. And a fellow called Damien Curek, who got an 80% vote, has decided to resign and to hand that to Poilievre. So Poilievre has to run in a by-election in a few weeks' time. And if he wins it, which he obviously should when there's an 80% support for his party, he doesn't get to return to the Parliament until, I think the earliest is August 31. But Poilievre is still the opposition leader working outside of the Parliament, a bit like what Campbell Newman did before he was elected Premier of Queensland. But Poilievre has come out and completely backflipped on what failed him in the election. So he has now come out. We're going to play that clip a little bit later on what he said about immigration now in his country, which is massive. But I've done a little bit of, sort of looking around this morning, speaking to a few people. This is how bad Poilievre went. He was invited onto the Patrick Bet-David podcast before the election. Patrick Bet-David gets millions of views, and it's a big conservative podcast. And he pulled out at the last minute. And you think, what is your reasoning to do that? So this is the Canadian stranglehold. Canada's about as bad as Australia in this sort of woke fest that's going on. But Canada, has just turned out today, is the number one intake of refugees of any country in the world, and they can't afford to live. So we will play that into some sort of perspective. So what's happening is the great big turnaround. And at the same time, Javier Milei in Argentina has ended budget deficits after 123 years. His inflation is at lowest levels in literally decades. His country is booming. And how did he do it? He got rid of the socialists. And where there was red tape, he got rid of it. And all of a sudden, simple things are changing. Food is getting cheaper. He got rid of the red tape over air travel. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So there is really, it's such an interesting world that we are in at the moment, that the world is convinced that there's always someone that we need to lift, and there's no problem helping others out. But when you do so at your own neglect because you think that your own case is hopeless, so that you get some sort of satisfaction by saying, well, there's obviously someone worse off than me, what you don't realize is the slippery slope is taking us all down together. And it's not about someone getting more than you have. It's about recognizing that we all need to be able to have a baseline. And at the same time, it's not about attacking the billionaires. That's socialism. That's the problem. It's about everyone being able to contribute, wanting to contribute, and the productivity itself of the market is proving itself. And that's what Javier Milei is trying to say here. I just find it staggering that people think that the redistribution of income is going to solve any problem. The only way that ever happens is people like Albo get their fourth pay rise in as many years, and his salary is now $622,000, which I just find astonishing. That this guy, the great underachiever, underperformer, is living the life of Riley, thinking that he is Australia's greatest ever Prime Minister, literally defeating Peter Dutton, who did a Poilievre and fell on his sword. It's astonishing. But we will get into all that. There's so much to talk about today.
I think the way the billionaires have engineered control and power is through their corporations. And I posted this morning because there's outrage in the UK because the comedian David Walliams was recording a comedy panel show in London, and it had a live audience. And it's a great show, actually. It's a very popular show. And during the recording, when the camera wasn't on him and a lady was speaking about something to do with hand gestures, he did a Nazi salute as a joke, and I think it was the BBC, and they said, it's never going to make it into the show, but we're very disappointed. And of course, the first thing that the studio audience did was they tweeted out, well, this wasn't on my bingo card to see David Walliams do the Nazi salute. He was joking. He's one of the funniest comedians that have ever lived. Him and Matt Lucas, if you've ever watched Little Britain, yourself out. It's brilliant. And it really made me think. I posted on it. It's pinned at the top of my X account, address at the bottom of the screen, because it made me realize that for all of my lifetime, over half a century, and I've been part of this as an actor, we've watched Hollywood script, record, and then disseminate movies and documentaries about Nazi Germany, about child abuse, about government conspiracies, about Grand Theft Auto. There's even video games about it. And these corporations who are doing it for profit have their freedom of speech, freedom to portray, whether it's in a comedy fashion. They've also done that. I mean, for God's sake, even Prince Harry used to go to dress-up parties as a Nazi. So these corporations and monarchy are seemingly allowed to do anything they want to do, but we, the ordinary people on the ground, we have to watch our P's and Q's. And I don't think it's fair, because now, as I've said before, these public-private partnerships, which have now just become privately owned, Vic Roads and, registration, all the different government departments, even the ATO for taxation, these private companies come in and they say, basically, you have to pay us so you can drive. You have to pay us to register your car. You have to pay us on taxation. Now, I haven't contracted with any of these corporations. And actually, under the letter of the law, Jason, it's unlawful for a corporation to try and contract with an individual. And yet that's what we're seeing. So all of these corporations and Hollywood and the money machine and those using it for commercial value, what they can do what they want. They can do all the hand gestures they want, right? But we, the people on the ground, even comedians, you have to watch what you say and watch your P's and Q's. I didn't contract with any of these corporations. I'm not going to continue to contract with these corporations. I will only contract with government departments. For instance, the ATO, it used to be the Commonwealth Revenue Fund. That's where your taxation went, the Commonwealth Revenue Fund, and they had to justify how that was spent. They don't have to do that anymore because it doesn't go to the Commonwealth Revenue Fund. It goes to a private company, the ATO. It's absolutely disgusting. The corporations are becoming the gods, the masters, and we're just the serfs who are expected to say, oh, yes, boss, to these corporations we don't actually work for. So our politicians might work for these corporations, but we don't. So I've had enough. I've had enough with the corporations, Jason.
When a government department sells out to a corporation like that, you wonder what the rules of monopoly are at that point. So do they get to charge, one fee for registration? Should you introduce competition, for example? Maybe have two private corporations charging for registration, and maybe they're going to have to be responsible for maintaining the roads. But if it's going to be collected and thrown into consolidated revenue, then it's going to be quite hard to do it. None of it makes any sense, and you wonder what it's really about. And I remember I think it was actually my uncle who was in the Labor Party at the time explained to me it was like a big cash injection, like a sugar hit. And I think many people have supported that over the years to say that when they privatise, that's what it's about. They raise this money like they try to do in New South Wales, selling off the poles and the wires so that they would get, a few $1 billion to then go and spend on more pet projects. But this is the point. This is all, like diluted socialism one way or another, raising money, selling off your assets to then be able to, go and create another project, etc. And when we get into the show today, we'll see what said projects are doing both here and around the world and whether or not they are beneficial. There is a lot to get through. Now, perhaps we can start off with a funny meme that we don't normally do. We would normally save this for the elephant in the room, but I think to that person that got onto the YouTube page and didn't like the fact that I was mocking Greta Thunberg, well, you can have another bitch and moan today. Here's another one for you. The world record, Greta Thunberg becomes the first hostage victim in history whose kidnappers only demand is that she leave. There you go. I thought that was cute. Goodness me, unreal. There she was getting marched through an airport or walking through an airport yesterday, and she pretended to have her hands cuffed behind her back, and she was called out for it. Good on you, Greta. You are the best. Wow. Anyway, it's just extraordinary. Now, some good news coming out of Queensland, albeit very, very slow, but we've learnt today that David Crisafulli says that we've got to move on, and he dismisses pandemic policies once and for all. He said government employees would no longer be bound by COVID-19 vaccinations as he sought to remove every barrier to hold on to every police officer, nurse and doctor. We've got to move on. We've got to move forward, Crisafulli said about the controversial mandates that were enforced during the pandemic. Who would have thought that we're still talking about it? He says the division that has been experienced cannot continue. The division that existed for whatever reason must be a thing of the past. This is no longer the case in Queensland. So that is terrific to hear that Crisafulli has decided to once and for all end it, stand up against the system, and he does present a very different attitude. And I'm informed by people in the know that know him personally. They know that he is a different type of politician with a different outlook and one that will buck the system. So the good thing is that even though it's a small move, it's a very positive move in the right direction. Other people will say, well, it's not enough. He's got to come out and say, well, we're going to ban this and do that. Well, it's a process. We're going to talk about that today with Robert Kennedy's latest move in the health space. But currently we're working on our Australian news segment, Nicola.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I wonder how long it will take for the truth about a lot of these vaccines to filter down to our chemists and pharmacies, Jason, because I posted a clip this morning that shows they've not really got a clue what they're talking about. If you're talking about misinformation, they're peddling it in spades.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, I am going to run down the list of video clips. I'm going to play that for you now.
Oh, well, this is gold. A lady walks into a Terry White pharmacist in Australia and asks for long-term safety data on elderly patients. She's talking about an 89-year-old mother having the COVID and flu shot at the same time combined, and that would be her 7th COVID shot. And the pharmacy assistant says it's clinically safe. That's a lie. And the pharmacist herself says, oh yes, the long-term safety data is available online. This is extraordinary. These are the people you're listening to, and they haven't got a clue.
Hello. What sort of vaccines are you doing now? Are you doing the flu and COVID combined?
Yeah.
And what else is with that? I hear you're doing 4-in-1, giving 4 injections. No. All right. Well, what is the research on combining the flu and COVID? Do you know?
It's clinically safe.
Says who? What's the long-term study? Because my mother wants to get it, and I'm not sure that's a good idea for someone who's 89. Hello.
COVID and flu together. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the long-term safety data on that?
It's fine. You can have them at once. Just sometimes the next day you don't feel so good. That's all. But
really? Is that all?
Safety is fine. Yep.
What are the studies that have been done on it now? The combining of the two of them?
There's quite a few online, and you can get them at the same time. It's quite safe.
Has the TGA said that?
Yeah.
And there is evidence that it's fine?
Yeah, definitely fine. Yeah, just sometimes you can feel a bit sick the next day.
Right. And what about if it's his 7th COVID injection with flu?
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many.
Doesn't matter how many now.
Oh,
well, they just said that under 18 shouldn't have any. So how's it safe?
So with the over 75, you can have one every 6 months.
And
Over 75 can have a COVID shot every 6 months. My God. Good luck to all of you. This is an IQ test.
Wow.
Well, there is no long-term safety data, Jason. So what's that pharmacist talking about?
This is right. So, and this is the thing that has really bugged me, that it's a bandwagon, and they believe that they hold the credentials, and therefore whatever comes out is bulletproof. And this is what's bugged me all along, is that when you ask a doctor or a health professional, and I had the conversations with all people, doctors, nurses, any form of health professional, anyone wearing some sort of uniform. So what have you actually read? And they look at you and they pretend that they have, or they admit that they haven't, but they don't know. And I always found it funny when they'd say, oh, well, I believe the doctor. And I even had family members that would say, well, I don't believe what's on the internet. Well, you know what's on the internet are the studies. So have you read them? Do you even know what a study is? Have you read what's going on? And they look at you like, well, you've beaten me on this one, but I'm going to pretend that I'm in the know. So what happens, therefore, is then that they hunt in packs and they go for the majority rule. And that's why we are the black sheep, all of us watching today.
I know that GPs and doctors are busy, but when my husband's son had an adverse reaction, let's say, to the Pfizer injection, and my husband went to see the GP, and he believed this GP was his friend and a good friend to the family and loved him, my husband took a binder of all the research and all the evidence to the GP, and he wasn't interested. And within a couple of weeks, this thing's happening in Victoria where doctors are swapping surgeries. So they're going to the other side of town, and that doctor's going to their side of town. And then when people turn up and say, oh, well, you recommended it, this GP surgery recommended it, and my husband died or my grandmother died. And then they're saying, oh, well, I don't know anything about that because that was before me. Hands washed.
Isn't it interesting that you can just say that and get away with it? Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Now, in other news, we're going to just sort of travel around the globe for a moment. We've learnt today that Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr., has appointed Dr. Robert Malone onto the ACIP, that is the Advisory Committee on Immunisation Practices. So whilst he was kicked off Twitter back in the day for warning parents about injecting their children with mRNA, Bobby Kennedy has announced him as one of 8 new members on this particular panel that will oversee vaccine recommendations. So many people are considering that this is a big deal, and there are others that still blame Robert Malone for sort of being one of the peddlers of it. It's an interesting argument. I know that Dr. Paul Alexander, a Canadian doctor that used to work in the Trump administration, has been after Malone and puts him in the same category as Robert Baller. But I think that he misses a lot of the nuance. Now, having said that, I've interviewed Robert Malone in the past, and I found it a very difficult interview, and certainly not one of my best, that I couldn't get a word in with Malone. It was interesting that was the case, whereas with others, I've just, you know how you have an expectation, and sometimes you're blown away when you do an interview, like, wow, that was a lot better than I thought. Whereas other ones I thought, oh, it wasn't as good as I'd hoped. So that was interesting. Meanwhile, I think it's important that we play Malone himself talking now about mRNA. I think this is really important to understand where he comes from. And of course, Malone has taken, like Peter McCullough denies that he took the jabs. Peter McCullough said that he'd taken 2. Malone has also taken them. So this is an interesting point. So this is balanced, nuanced perspective. I'll play it for you now.
Before you inject your child, a decision that is irreversible, I wanted to let you know the scientific facts about this genetic vaccine, which is based on the mRNA vaccine technology I created. There are 3 key issues that parents need to understand. The first is that a viral gene will be injected into your children's cells. This gene forces your child's body to make toxic spike proteins. These proteins can cause permanent damage in children's critical organs, including their brain and nervous system, their heart and blood vessels, including blood clots, their reproductive system, and this vaccine can trigger fundamental changes to their immune system. The most alarming part about this is that these damages, once they occur, are irreparable. You can't fix lesions within their brains. You can't repair heart tissue scarring. You can't repair a genetically reset immune system. And this vaccine can cause reproductive damage that could affect future generations of your family. The second thing that you need to know about this is the fact that this novel technology has not been adequately tested. We typically need at least 5 years of testing and research before we can really understand the risks of new medicines or vaccines. Harms and risks from new medicines often become revealed many years later. So ask yourself, if you want your own child to be part of the most radical medical experiment in human history. One final point. The reason they're giving you to vaccinate your child is a lie. Your children represent no danger to their parents or grandparents. It's actually the opposite. Their immunity after getting COVID is critical to save your family, if not the world, from this disease. In summary, there is no benefit.
It got cut off there, but
No, that's okay. We get it. It was a wonderful clip. Let me just say before I comment on Robert Malone that the lady in the clip from the Terry White Pharmacy in Australia, that her name is Rosemary Marshall, and she's the lady that started Forest of the Fallen. So, Rosemary, there's a credit there. Now, Dr. Malone doing an amazing service to humanity there. It's a nice thought, isn't it, that we, the unvaccinated, might actually be helping the whole planet develop natural immunity or some kind of natural immunity to this, because it's so important. And, you know, for someone of his stature, and I do like him, you can't agree with someone all the time. That's what people need to understand. But you must find it within yourself to open yourself up to listen to people who are erring on the side of caution. And this is what my husband and I always said. We wanted to take a wait and see approach. So when you've taken the wait and see approach, and then the weight of evidence and the data which they're trying to bury shows that actually they were wrong and it didn't help and it wasn't safe and it wasn't effective and it wasn't even required in the first place, then you need to listen to those people because they are being proved correct. And this isn't about being right or wrong. This is about looking at the evidence, and the evidence is overwhelming. And I understand that there's some of you out there that might not want to hear that evidence. And if I'd taken it, I wouldn't want to either. But I think for all of us to move forward and make sure that we even have a future, we need to listen to these people who warned about it prior, who are experts in the field, and now they've been proven right. It's very, very important. He reminds me of Grizzly Adams as well. Do you remember Grizzly Adams?
oh, of course. I always think he's got a bit of a Harrison Ford look about him in disguise, hiding behind that beard. He's a real interesting character, and I do remember it took some time that we got him on, but to speak to him was at the same time. But yeah, it was just an odd interview. Isn't it funny, this situation? But those facts are right there, and so RFK Jr. Who better to get onto a panel than the guy that was involved in the creation, the invention of this technology. So you can now bypass all the people, gaslighting you about what they think they know. Well, this guy was involved in the invention. And so therefore the right person to have on in that panel. And what better way to be able to move away from it?
What did he say as well after the fact during the pandemic? He was really upset. And he said, this makes me wish I hadn't invented this technology because this isn't actually why I invented it.
Exactly right. A bit like I'm just trying to remember his name now. Corey, the inventor of the PCR test. When he said after he passed away shortly before COVID, and he said you can get the PCR test to do anything, and that was the point, wasn't it? But it wasn't exactly what that was invented for, but it was very useful at the same time.
Carrie Mullen?
Correct. That's the name. Yeah. So there you go. Between the two of us, we have a brain array. The two of us will get there in the end. Now, look, I want to get down to Victoria. I want to come in so that we can maybe do our show together. But I tell you what, there's a few restaurants that I won't be attending that I've decided very much against. So I'm going to put on the boycott. And mind you, there are some amazing restaurants in Melbourne. It's part of the reason that you do travel down to the great state of Victoria. Made a little less great lately. But when we saw Anthony Albanese come out and be so disgusted about the Channel 9 journalist that got a rubber bullet in her leg the other day in the LA riots. We all wondered why he never made a comment about this. The rubber bullets used on freedom protesters in Melbourne, Australia, by the police. Now, they look pretty severe. Imagine getting all those rubber bullets in your back, shot in the back. Look at that injury there on that person's stomach. Unbelievable. And, of course, the one there in the forehead is just obscene. Well, what should Mr. Pay Rise... There he is, fourth pay rise since becoming PM. How are you going to spend all that money, Albo? Well, Albo does what good old Labor PMs like to do, have a bottoms up and a boozy lunch. Who should he be lunching with? Old Daniel Andrews himself, in what looks to be a fairly exclusive-looking bistro in downtown Melbourne. I want to know, what is Andrews and Albanese discussing? I thought Andrews was out of politics, but of course it could well be a CCP Australia branch lunch between the two leaders. It's an astonishing story there. What do you think's going on?
Well, it's in a restaurant called Gimlet in Russell Street in Melbourne, and it's a minimum of $200 a head. So that's nice to know that we, the taxpayer, are definitely paying for that lunch. Why would the taxpayer want to pay for Daniel Andrews to have lunch? But as you say, I assumed he was out of politics and he gets an audience with the PM. Are they friends? If it's a friendly thing and nothing to do with politics, then we shouldn't be paying for it. Or is there something more sinister going on? And of course, with these two, there usually is. But it was the day after Anthony Albanese was outraged about the rubber bullet in a journalist. He's meeting a guy who clearly sanctioned rubber bullets on the general public. So these people have, it's sort of, they cherry pick their outrage, don't they? And they're just complete hypocrites. I'm very worried about the fact that Daniel Andrews seems to still be in politics, and he wouldn't get a single vote from anyone at this point.
Astonishing. And I wonder if people are going to want to boycott this particular restaurant, just as they did when they found out that Andrews was trying to build a home out at the outskirts of Melbourne, I think, or somewhere in the rural area. And we saw those videos pop up a little while ago, which was interesting. Perhaps they were discussing economics, Nicola, and I was wondering maybe they were discussing the value of this decision. Therefore, by a logo rebrand, $180,000 later, if you will, looks like, 3 squares lined up to look like diamonds, 4 in fact, to make a map of Australia. Might be all the creativity you can do for $180,000. Can you believe that?
Well, you could have done that on Vistaprint for about $15, or you could have done it on Canva for free for them. I mean, firstly, it's not that impressive. But secondly, doesn't this just smack of money laundering? There's no way an individual got paid $180,000 to do that, unless it was like a relative of someone in government and they just needed the cash for a house deposit. And they said, look, just send me back some kind of logo and I'll send you $180K. It's funny that these people say that they're socialists and they admire China. They really want to go back to the days. It reminds me of the UK when you've got the kings up in the castles living in the mansions. And then you've got, all the serfs living in their hamlets, let's say 15-minute cities, and they've got nothing. They're lucky if they can slaughter a little piglet every year. Because they don't, it's sort of do as I say and not as I do, right? Most Australians right now couldn't go and have a minimum $200 a head lunch. And because they're politicians, they would have bought out all the booths around it. Very disappointed in the restaurant. Obviously, they could have been fooled. It wasn't booked in their names, that kind of thing. But we don't want Dan Andrews having anything to do with Victoria. We're already, you see, I still think he's the Premier of Victoria, secretly. That's what I think, because she's not making the decisions, Jacinta Allen. She's unelected. Nothing she does makes sense. She's been told to stand around on building sites in hard hats. That's basically, she's like a PR girl at one of these cars shows, giving out leaflets. I think Dan Andrews is pulling the strings, which means what? Which means Anthony Albanese and the Labour Party in this country are responsible for edging it into dictatorship, into full communism, like China, the China that they really admire, right? And that's very concerning. That's subversion of democracy. and they could both go to jail for the rest of their lives for doing it. We don't have transparency. We won't have the minutes of that meeting. They'll say it was private, therefore you can't know. But then we'll find out later on it was paid for by the taxpayer. These two should not be in politics, neither of them.
Well, Nicola, it turns out some breaking news right now. The reason that they can go to such a lunch for $200 a head, it turns out it's the royalties from the Dan Andrews Lego. There you go. That must have been what it is. So how about that? Anyway, in another interesting story surrounding the least popular politician that we know, in a major update, according to the Bike Boy scandal, your support helped Brian win his battle against Slater and Gordon lawyers. Now we're working with our investigators, it says, and expert lawyers, and we believe all of Victoria will be blown away by what happens next. Expect a major announcement in the next few weeks. So perhaps Andrews, who pretends there's nothing to worry about there, is having a strategic meeting with his friend Albo to find out how they're going to defend about what may come. So really, really interesting.
I don't mean to be rude. I really don't mean to be rude. Maybe put the slide back up. I don't mean to be rude. We live in a world where people can do whatever they want and identify as whatever they want. But doesn't Daniel Andrews' wife look like she may not have started life as a woman? I know they've got children, but you know, if you zoom in, I don't know if we can zoom in on her face, but it's always been surprising to me. It's a bit odd, that one, but hey, you know, love is love.
Oh, there you go. Old Kath. How about it? Well, in other interesting news in Australia, I think this is interesting. This popped up in The Spectator today, the deliberate breakdown, the sinking of Australia, exercising control over citizens in a lure for communists. Well, Andrew Urban's not holding back there. I find that really interesting that finally, there is a little bit of a rearguard action in terms of net zero, climate change, etc. Now, Chris Ullman now works for Sky News, but the interesting thing about Chris Ullman is that in 2006, he was made chief political correspondent for ABC Radio Current Affairs. In 2008, he switched to TV. He was the political editor for the 7:30 Report, ABC News and ABC News Channel. And in 2010, he was appointed co-host of the ABC TV current affairs program 7:30. In 2012, the show was revamped again, with Ullman returning to be the political editor and Lee Sales hosting the program. So you don't get more ABC blood than Chris Ullman. Well, I'm going to play you a clip now, part of it at least. This is him talking to former Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson all about net zero. It's astonishing, but it's a turnaround. So when you put it together with what we saw today from Crisafulli on COVID mandates, when you see that Albanese is entirely on the nose, AUKUS is at risk, whether or not you believe in that or not, doesn't matter. But the fact is that he can't even get a meeting with Trump. Take a look at this clip, Chris Ullman.
It is the most massive exercise in virtue signalling, which will essentially do absolutely nothing for the planet, particularly out of a country like Australia, which is just over 1% of the world's emissions. So what we are doing now is engaging in extremely expensive exercise because people see the imperative that we have to do something about climate change. But unfortunately, the problem for Australia is it won't do anything about that. And a large part of the rest of the world is not doing anything about trying to address their emissions at all. So we essentially are retooling our grid around a system which won't function, which will be highly expensive and will deliver us into poverty, essentially. If we stay on this pathway, we will not be able to manufacture anything in Australia because the other things that we're going to need, which manufacturing, as you know, a big part of that is industrial heat. We're not going to get that out of wind or solar either. What we're going to see is and we're seeing it already, is the shuttering of our industry around Australia as this kind of energy is rolled out because it's inadequate for the purpose. We're going from a system that delivered us stable, affordable power in the 20th century to a system that's going to deliver us unstable, unaffordable power in the 21st. And think about this, John. You were in politics in Australia for a long time. Australia came to a settlement at the beginning of the 20th century, which was this, that we would be a high wage economy, but we were a low energy cost economy. So that equation worked for us. In the 21st century, we cannot be both a high wage and a high energy cost economy because no one is going to pay the bill for our lifestyle.
Australia's contribution to net zero, and I don't believe in net zero because we need carbon, The idea of net zero is the idea of death and food shortages, and whoever came up with this and whoever is supporting this should be removed from office, right? Because it is clearly a lie, a hoax. But it's like if you imagine an oil tanker full of oil floating out into a beautiful crystal blue ocean, and you're being told that that oil tanker is going to just dump all of that oil into the ocean. And Australia goes down into the bottom of the ship and takes a bucket and removes a bucket of oil and says, well, that's what we contributed to the oil slick. We'll remove that. We'll do our bit. It will cost people's lives and livelihoods, but we've taken our bucket of oil out. And then everyone else around the world, China, India, America, they just keep dumping all their oil into the water. It's not going to make a difference. We are even if this were true, and it's not, it's a lie, the people you should be lobbying, World Economic Forum, are the people that you're saying are societies that you admire. Klaus Schwab said, and also Joe Biden said, we admire a rising China. Well, China is the greatest polluter. India is the next greatest polluter. I think then it's like America and Russia. So why are we doing this? Why are they talking about blocking out the sun in the UK? The UK gets like 2 weeks of sun a year anyway. It's not going to make a difference. So there's obviously other agendas at play. I believe it's because UV light in the sun either stops people getting sick or heals them once they have been sick. And it's interesting because at the moment, my husband and I are watching for the first time, and I know we're a bit behind the 8 ball, but we've only got DVDs here and I had to wait for it to come. We're watching the show Yellowstone, and I know everyone loves that show Yellowstone. And there's a character in there, one of the wives of the sons, and she is a Native American Indian. And what she talks about when her son's been through something traumatic and someone's going out camping and looking after cattle, she says, would you please take him with you? Because I can't think of a better medicine for what's going on with him than being outside and looking at the stars. And I sat there and I thought, we are human beings. We were here before the technology, before the governments, before the control. And we knew as a species that the best medicine was the sunlight, the moonlight, the stars, the oceans, swimming and being outside and exercising. And what's happened through human civilization is they've gone to an awful lot of time and expense financially to convince us that the best way to stay healthy is to take these toxins, to take these poisons. And they know that it's going to harm us. And then they come in from stage left with their remedies. On a smaller scale, they've done historically what they're doing now on a large scale, which is creating illness so they can profit from it. We need to go back to like civilizations like the Native American Indians and the Aboriginals who all still live outside. And we should, understand that we don't need to put toxins into our bodies to live a healthy life. We need to use what nature gave us. And what are they trying to do, Jason? Remove what nature gave us, primarily the sun.
Well, Elon Musk shared this overnight. Have a look at this. And this is a fellow called Jesse Pelton. I don't understand how anybody can look at this and think solar isn't real energy. The sun is 99.9% of the mass of our solar system. And to show you the perspective there, if I remove the banner at the bottom of the screen, there we are.
There we
Look
are.
at that. There we are. Absolutely insignificant. So if we just do a little bit of a calculation, maybe a little bit on the run. So we are the 1, 2, 3, there's 4 planets that, so Mercury, Venus is about the same, Mars, Pluto, not real planet. So we're like one of the smallest, right? So Jupiter's the big guy, Saturn and the other 2 big gas giants there. So we're insignificant. And we, Australia, represent 1% of the emissions of that. And we're on the other side of the planet away from everyone. And we think we're going to make a difference.
But the Earth is billions of years old, Jason. If carbon was a problem, we wouldn't be here right now because carbon's been in the gas in the atmosphere for all those billions of years. These people are crazy.
It's nuts, isn't it? And so we've got this guy telling us that that's how it works. And the only one that's even more of a goose than him is the other fellow that I showed you just before. And now the graphic has gone missing on me. I was just going to put
They're
up
just
that
liars
picture.
in chief, aren't they? They're like, I'm embarrassed for them. I know that part of their job is to be the ultimate sales rep, you know, Scotty from marketing. But to know that they are lying, I mean, we know for a fact, Jason, that they are lying, I find very disturbing. And the fact that they are so tone deaf to the fact that the majority of the population now know they're lying, and even if it's not the majority, even if it's only 50%, and yet they continue peddling the lies, I'm very embarrassed for them. I wouldn't be surprised if that was behind the meeting between Daniel Andrews and Anthony Albanese. For my money, if I was being sensible, not that these people are sensible, the harms, the profits, the lies, the scams that they managed to get away with are done. They're in the past, and they got away with them for up to 5 years. If these people are considering that they might get away with them again for a second faux pandemic or ongoing pandemics, you know, Australians are going to have a really big, strong think about what they're going to do, because how far will this go? Will they turn weapons against us? They already have. You showed the damage from the rubber bullets. How far are they prepared to go to force us to be customers of their new OPEC, the pharmaceutical industry? And what are we going to do about it if they try?
Well, you look and you think, surely to goodness, the RFK term is going to change things. It feels like that that it has to happen in the US before it comes here. We are now proven to be the slowest to the table. I mean, between Australia, Canada, and the UK, I mean, we're equally as bad as each other, but Australia just drags its feet no matter what. It is tough going. Now, I wanted to actually, I was going to go over to the big plane crash and just cover that story for you. But before I do, I just want to show you again a bit of the craziness that's going on here in Australia. This is a female that was arrested. Just take a look at this clip. It just shows you how crazy things really are, even in Australia.
Yes.
Hey, what up? How you doing, bro? I'm gonna kill everyone in that bell, including all of these cops. Yeah, I'm gonna kill all of them, including the cops. Look. Yes, the camera is showing aggressiveness. Yo.
Yeah, they bundled her into the back of that divvy van pretty quick because they knew everyone's got a phone camera now, haven't they? You know, and what this is the cultural enrichment, right? And I'm not saying it's any culture in particular, but you know, I'm assuming from her accent, let's say, that she wasn't born in Australia. So what's going on here? Because, you know, I know that some of these migrants who have been guilty of sexual crimes are being given prison terms or offered to go back to their home countries. But I think that we are woefully underinformed about how many people who've been either criminal, thieves, or violent, or making threats like that. I can guarantee you, if there was footage of Nicola Charles being dragged into a divvy van saying that I was going to kill the lot of you, that'd be the end of me in Australia. I guarantee you, that'd be the end of me in Australia. They would have their ammunition. She's gone, right? But it's like Keir Starmer in the UK, isn't it? It's two-tier justice.
Yeah, and we're going to play a clip shortly with Elise Stefanik giving Kathy Hochul, the new York governor, a serve. We'll get there in a moment because that's going to go through the whole immigration thing that's playing out in the US. There's a lot of news to cover there. I just want to cover the plane crash that most people will be aware of by the time they see this today, but it's horrific. Yeah. But like we saw back in Thredbo with the miracle of Stuart Diver being recovered and saved, this has one similar story. So let's look at the crash quickly.
आग लगी बस्ती में
Well, he's
That's-
a big, strong-looking guy, Jason, but he just won the lottery. There's your new celebrity in India. My God, how did he walk away from a plane crash?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? So we've learnt that apparently he was in seat 11A, so right there at the exit, and managed to somehow get out of this plane. So obviously it was engulfed in flames and exploded, but not completely at the time. But to be able to undo the door and get out and be the only survivor, as we're aware of, is just something else. And it just it reminded me of that Stuart Diver incident. But obviously, if you are a believer, and I assume that this man will now be, God has bigger plans for that gentleman. What a story. What an incredible story amidst the worst possible tragedy that you could ever imagine. And then, of course, you've got this other psychological concept of survivor guilt, where people who do survive plane crashes suffer immensely
That's
as a result of wondering why it was that they were spared. So, this poor man has got something to have to navigate for the rest of his life as we all try and make sense of what happened there. And there isn't any sort of, reliable information that we can share at this point. But just at the same time, when you wake up to see news like that, it is just incredible.
I think watching that video footage of him walking away is all the information I need. Whatever they come out and tell us afterwards, I never believe anything I see on the news or what they tell us afterwards anymore. He was sitting on the bulkhead seat there, the one that has extra leg room, and I'm assuming he sort of engineered sitting there, as all tall people do. I've done it myself for long haul flights. I believe that would have been a 9-hour flight. So you can stretch your legs out and not be cramped up, because we all know they've become smaller and smaller inside. I don't know, and this is just me, hypothesizing, but I think I've seen some of those research things that when there's a plane crash and it either fails or has an explosion, that's where it snaps, is there in the middle on that bulkhead. So I don't know, he could have snapped and he could have fallen out before it, burst into a ball of flames. I think what's good about seeing him walk away is there is a lot of people now saying that it blew up before it hit the ground. I'm not sure I saw that at all. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm on board with that. Maybe we'll find out something else later on. But I can guarantee you, if the plane had exploded, in a bomb scenario before it hit the ground, that guy wouldn't be walking away. So I think that probably dispels that particular conspiracy theory, to be honest. I mean, it's incredible. And I don't think anyone who survives any disaster or tragedy should have any survivor guilt. You have a responsibility to live your best life, and that's that.
Exactly right. And you're thinking too, as it's gone down, just to pull the seatbelt off in that moment as the plane's descending shortly after takeoff, to be the only one that was able to do that. If the plane did snap at that point, why was he the only one that was able to do that and fall out? So again, so much going on in that scenario. Isn't it funny in a plane crash that the black box recorder always survives, but nothing else does? Or in this case, except for this fellow. And one wonders why you don't travel inside a black box flight recorder as the ultimate insurance policy for all of that yourself. Just incredible. Now, now we're going to turn over, actually, what I want to do. Oh, no, I'll save that. This is because we're doing news. There's so many stories to share. It's going to build up for you nicely. This is Senator Alex Padilla bursting in to a press conference today for Kristi Noem amidst what's happening with the riots and the No King story. Have a look at this.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your heads off.
How many of our ICE agents have been doxxed for doing their duty, how they have been targeted.
Okay, so Padilla's burst in without any particular identification. He's been pushed out because no one really recognised who he was in this short moment. Here's what happened immediately after.
Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you let my hands go, I put behind my back.
All right, cool. One hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
I do not know. There's no recording allowed out here per FBI, right?
So,
there you go.
Senator in handcuffs. So Gavin Newsom comes out and says if they can handcuff a US senator for asking a question, imagine what they will do to you. There you go, Gavin Newsom, fueling the fire for the weekend. And he then says that Padilla is one of the most decent people I know. This is outrageous, dictatorial and shameful. Trump and his shock troops are out of control. This must end now. Well, Dan Bongino, Deputy Director of the FBI, has responded with regard to the incident in LA. The senator in question was not wearing a security pin and physically resisted law enforcement when confronted. Our FBI personnel acted completely appropriately while assisting Secret Service, and we are grateful for their professionalism and service. So you can say what you like about it. If that was a Republican in the Biden administration, one wonders what might have gone on. And an interesting perspective was that for all the riots that we've seen and all of the Minnesota blow-ups, et cetera, that went over the past, the Antifa riots, January 6th, that whole thing that we're told was the great insurrection, it only lasted 3 hours. And if you recalled on the interview with Stephen Sun, the chief of police, when he described 71 minutes trying to get support and reinforcements, and then when they finally agreed to it after 71 minutes and 32 phone calls, he then said the National Guard stood outside for 3.5 hours. Isn't that interesting? So that period of time of 5 hours, the whole thing only lasted 3. So had the National Guard come in, it never would have even happened. And therefore, you can argue that there was an actual provocation, if you will, which I just think just tells you the real story behind the story there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because we live in a world as well where we know that people can actually wear quite advanced makeup to look like another person, let's say a mask or whatever you believe. You walk in a suit and you say, I'm a senator. The reason they stopped him is because he wasn't wearing a pin, he wasn't wearing a badge. I do wonder, though, why he was rushing in. What was so important that he wanted to say? I'm hoping we'll find out in some press conference afterwards. But you can't do that. I mean, you can't do that in most corporate buildings, walk in without a badge anyway. So I don't know what he was thinking in a government building. It's always been like that. It's nothing to do with Trump. So, yeah, interesting. I wasn't even aware of that.
So again, it's the theatre of it, isn't it? It's the way that you did it. It's almost like you were provoking at that point. Now, on LA, this is interesting from Trump. He says Los Angeles was safe and sound for the last 2 nights. Our great National Guard, with a little help from the Marines, put the LA police in a position to effectively do their job. They all work together, but without the military, LA would have been a crime scene like we haven't seen in years. And he gives Gavin Newsom a serve. He lost control of the situation.
Ooh. New scum.
So, yep, that's the nickname that he uses. It's really interesting.
Oh, wow.
Now, as we continue down this pathway, the protests, which obviously it's to fuel the fire, take a look at this. So this is an advertisement for this rally, the No Kings, they're calling it, June 14, Mobilise. And Laura Loomer reported that Walmart to release a statement tonight condemning violence after Walmart heiress Kristi Walton took out an ad promoting the June 14th anti-Trump No Kings protest in the New York Times. Interesting is that Laura Loomer says that, ironically, Kristi Walton doesn't even live in the US. She literally lives in Mexico, where she's taking out anti-Trump ads. I'm told by a source that other members of the Walton family, which owns Walmart, begged her not to take out the ad, but she didn't listen. She's supporting the pro-illegal alien riots all the way from her mansion in Mexico. Maybe she should just let the illegals move into her multiple mansions in Mexico. And thank you, Walmart, for releasing a statement, it turns out. So that's a big, big deal, that this is what's going on here. So are we looking at a provocation? Are we looking at someone paying? Remember that we only talked yesterday that that Trump came out and mentioned that at his speech that we're going to find out who's paying for it. And then we had the congressman who's I forgot his name. I'll remember it in a moment. I'm seeing a picture of his face and I can't remember his name, but he came out and issued a letter asking, again, they're going to investigate the payment of said protests, etc., and this organization of doing so. So interestingly, Trump was asked about if he was a king. Here's his response.
No Kings protests planned across the country on Saturday as well. What are your thoughts on those?
What are they going? No Kings?
No Kings.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, I'm not going to get this. A king would have never had the California mandate to even be talking to him. He wouldn't have to call up Mike Johnson and Thune and say, fellas, you got to pull this off. And after years, we get it done. No, we're not a king. We're not a king at all. Thank you very much.
It's interesting that someone on the left is using, again, inflammatory language like Trump is a king. We're realizing that a lot of our leaders are dictators, and I think, a dictator is worse. They tried that, by the way. I think who was that actor? Robert De Niro, was it? He was saying Trump's going to be a dictator, and they really tried to push the dictator angle a lot. Then they realized, like Canada and the UK and New Zealand and Australia, we were in dictatorships. And so they were like, yeah, no, that's going to work. I'm really humored by the fact that a family called the Waltons owns Walmart. But B, and I'm just showing my age there, but B, I always thought, and I'm pretty sure it's still the case, that Walmart is primarily a conservative outfit. You can buy guns in there. They've got, I never really shopped in Walmart when I lived in California, mostly because as soon as I walked in, on the left-hand side was a massive glass cabinet with loads of weapons in it. You've got hunting knives, you've got rifles, and everyone used to say, people were doing videos during the pandemic, boycott Walmart, Walmart's not woke, Walmart's not DEI. So how come these Waltons, the owners of Walmart, are now going up against a Republican president? I find that a bit odd. And the fact that she lives in Mexico, nice little tax haven there, Jason. These people are total scammers. Again, rules for thee, but not for me. I can do what I want.
It was suggested that, well, it wasn't suggested, it was more than that the original LA arrests was concerning a money laundering operation, and this made everything happen so quickly, like they almost like rushed to task. So one wonders who the money launderers were and what their connections were to real wealth. And then, of course, if you look at Walton, etc., it does open the door to some further inquiry. Now, the person that I was trying to mention, it's escaped me, was Josh Hawley. Of course, he's the chairman of the subcommittee on crime and counterterrorism, and this was the letter that he wrote that we talked about yesterday. Exactly right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a clip from a fellow that is telling us that he was offered $200 a day to participate in said No Kings riots. Take a look, or protests.
I just got offered $200 a day to go protest ICE in New York. The organization was called No Kings. They said June 14th we're going to be protesting, and these are the streets that you need to be on, and this is what you need to do. You need to cause chaotic disruptions, and they said that there's going to be pallets of like bricks and different things everywhere that protesters could use. They really want to wreak havoc. It's kind of ridiculous. Me as an American, although I need the money, I'm like, this is very, very unpatriotic. If I was to go take this money and go protest, it's not very American. It's not what I stand for. It's obviously not even, worth the time. But, $200 a day is what they're paying people to go protest. The corruption is up here because it goes way beyond these organizations. They want to destroy America, and people like me that need money are gonna go do it. I'm not gonna go do it, but people are gonna go do it. They're gonna go destroy, the city and cause chaos. It's just crazy that, they're even paying people to go do this. It just goes to show that everything we deal with is corruption, and these people at the top level, like, who's paying for this? There's got to be some billionaires paying for this so that, they could try to get Trump out or something. But, $200 a day to go cause chaos is, like, crazy. Not worth it, but also, like, really fucked up.
Can I
Interesting
just
that.
exhibit to you how stupid AI is? I just put in the Waltons' relationship with George Soros, because George Soros is the guy who delivers bricks. He's done that. He did that for BLM during the last Trump administration. Rehash, boring, boring. We've seen it before. And it said to me, AI, that George Soros has no relationship with a fictional TV family. So
Nice.
I've put
Well
in
played.
Walmart owners and George Soros to see if we. So George Soros's investment firm, fund management, has a stake in Walmart in the past. That means they have a past relationship. This woman is organizing the protest. Specifically, they exited their stake in Walmart during the fourth quarter of the year before the current one, very recently. That's according to the Washington Journal. Walmart is a publicly traded company, but the majority of its shares are held by the Waltons family, descendants of founder Sam Walton. So they do have a relationship. That was my first instinct. BRICS, George Soros, the Waltons, the King's protest. So they're all behind it. So you say follow the money. Trump wants to follow the money. Trump is going to have the big brass balls, and I know he does, to go up against some of the world's most powerful people financially. But they're doing the wrong thing, right? So George Soros said to us, you played the clip weeks ago, that he was a Nazi sympathizer, that when he was 14 years old, as a Jewish boy from Hungary, was it, that he sided with the Nazis for his own survival, and that he aided them in doing harm to the Jews, right? So, we've got this guy now who is encouraging insurrection. He's encouraging subversion of democracy. He's inciting violence. This is not his first rodeo, George Soros, with doing the wrong thing. And at the very least, Trump needs to kick that family out of America, at the very least.
Well, it's going to keep playing out, isn't it? But I'll tell you what. Here,
But why
I'm
is
going
he
to play.
keep getting away with it, Jason? You say it's going to keep playing out. How do these people keep getting away with it? How do the George Soros and the Bill Gates, even Warren Buffett and his railway lines, he was behind Biden getting rid of that Keystone pipeline, which would have been better for the environment than moving around oil on train tracks and safer. But oh no, Warren Buffett still needs to make money from his trains. We've got to stop creating a world where if you're a billionaire and something might affect your profit, you get to subvert democracy. George Soros, he was working with Klaus Schwab, who said it's going to become a more violent world. Of course it is. George Soros is delivering the bricks and paying people to be violent. What do you think would happen to me, Jason, in Australia? You've always got to flip it. What do you think would happen to me? We saw pregnant women get arrested in Australia for organizing, not even going yet, on Facebook to go to a peaceful protest during the pandemic. All she says was like, yeah, I'll go. What if I organised a protest and said that I was going to deliver bricks in Australia and said that I was going to pay you $200 a day? How long do you think it would be, Jason, before I'd be dropping down in London?
Well, that's what would happen right there. That's exactly what you would expect to happen. The reason I say it'll play out is that Josh Hawley, when we showed that letter yesterday, he wants to go back to November 5, 2024 to the present. He wants this particular executive director of the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights to provide all internal communications, including emails, texts, chat logs, etc., all financial documents related to protest demonstrations, mobilisation efforts in LA or elsewhere, all third-party contracts or vendor agreements, including arrangements with event organisers, transportation providers, security personnel, or communications consultants relating to immigration enforcement or for the LA protests or similar protests elsewhere, grant applications, funding of proposals, travel and lodging records for individuals or groups, media or public relations strategies, including talking points, press releases, coordination with journalists, donor lists. So failure to comply will result in additional action by the subcommittee, including potential referral for criminal investigation. So that's what I mean by process. So
we live in a surveillance world, Jason. Somebody, I don't care if it's a nobody, a guy with a van, somebody is driving these bricks, right, to the street corners. Get the rego, go down the line, find out who's who and who did what. Even if they've organised it for a particular street, close off that street. You've got to get to the bottom of this. And I know someone like George Soros is probably worth a lot of money in America, but America would survive without him, right? You've got to remove people. George Soros is the one who thinks he's the king of America. Why aren't we protesting peacefully that George Soros can't be the king? So if you want to rock up because you don't agree with this, maybe your posters should read, "You're absolutely right. Let's deport George Soros because he thinks he's the king of America." That's what's going on. Trump, he was elected. Nobody elected Nazi sympathizer George Soros.
Well, he only just funds everyone, and that's why they're all in line, as we learnt from that chap there, for $200, even though he said, "I need the money, but I won't take it." I thought it was interesting, though, that he was inside a model Tesla 3, and I picked that up from the roof lining. That's how much of a train spotter I am. Well, it's not George Soros delivering the bricks, but have a look at this fellow. Breaking exclusive, the driver who went viral for dropping off bionic shield face masks to LA riders was arrested by the FBI in a sting at his home this morning. Alejandro Orellana was taken into custody on suspicion of conspiracy to commit civil disorders. So that is something, calling for arrests. This is said bionic face shield, clear polycarbonate visor, and anti-fog hard coat, $218 a piece Australian, if you will. I know you can buy them on Timo for much less, but they're probably not the same thing. So this is what you're arming people with. So when you talk about organisation, therefore, Kristi Walton and trying to get people to come to your protests, and of course Hillary Clinton's chimed in, and Gavin Newsom, and this is a war between the Democrats. And I'm getting to the punchline very, very quickly. Before I get there, I'm going to play you one more clip. This is a Florida sheriff, and he is not mucking around. Have a look.
So I'm gonna break it down for you, all right? And if somebody wants to know what I mean by turn violent, all right, this is what I mean. If you resist lawful orders, you're going to jail. Let me be very clear about that. If you block an intersection or a roadway in Brevard County, you are going to jail. If you flee arrest, you're going to go to jail tired, because we are going to run you down and put you in jail. If you try to mob rule a car in Brevard County, gathering around it, refusing to let the driver leave, in our county, you're most likely going to get run over and dragged across the street. If you spit on us, you're going to the hospital and in jail. If you hit one of us, you're going to the hospital and jail, and most likely get bitten by one of our big, beautiful dogs that we have here. If you throw a brick, a firebomb, or point a gun at one of our deputies, we will be notifying your family where to collect your remains at, because we will kill you graveyard dead. We're not going to play. This has got to stop. You're watching what's taking place out there. You're seeing police officers that are being attacked, being spit on, being put in harm's way just for doing their jobs. You're seeing ICE agents that are being targeted for doing their jobs. And you're seeing obstructionists that are doing all of this, standing in the way of law and order.
Yeah, about that.
You're going to be stone cold dead. Stone cold dead. I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, a protest is one thing, a riot is another, and they're inciting violence here. Now, I think we should tie this together by trying to understand. I know the No Kings thing is the Democrat civil war against Trump. That's obvious. But the LA stuff is about ICE, right? It's about the migrants, and they don't like that Trump's going to send them back. Can we play the clip of Kathy Hochul, where she is pretending that she doesn't know about all of the terribly violent and brutal crimes being done by these migrants, and that this is why the administration is having to clean up the mess that was deliberately caused by the Biden administration?
I'm going to play that for you now. And then I'm going to hit the punchline with two more clips to follow, but you need to see this. It's fairly lengthy, but you will certainly appreciate it.
Do you know who Sakir Khan is? You should, as the governor of New York State. Do you know?
Refresh my recollection.
He was an illegal migrant in New York. And do you know what crime he committed in addition to being here illegally?
No, I do not.
You do not. This was widely reported. He found a 15-year-old girl, threatened her with a metal pole, told her to get into the back seat of his car. He took her clothes off, and he violently raped her in Albany, New York. Do you know who Sebastian Zapita Khalil is?
I'm sure you'll tell me. There's many cases, whether they're...
These are high-profile cases. Yes. New Yorkers know about them, and you don't. So let's talk about Sebastian Zapita Khalil. Do you know who that is?
I don't have the specific details at my disposal, no.
Well, this is an illegal migrant in New York because of your sanctuary state policies. Do you know what crime he committed?
I'm not familiar at this moment.
I bet you're going to be familiar when I remind you, he found a sleeping woman on the subway, lit her on fire, and burned her alive. This is in Kathy Hochul's New York. And as I'm sure you are aware, and I'll remind you, that ICE issued an order to detain this violent criminal, but that was rejected by New York officials due to sanctuary state laws. Now, do you know who Raymond Rojas Basilio is?
I just want to say this. These crimes are horrific.
Because of your sanctuary state policies.
In all of these cases, we would work with ICE to remove them.
You did not in this case. They are walking on the streets because of your policies and your executive order that you signed 3 times. Now, Raymond Rojas Basilio, do you know who that is?
I'm telling you this. I will explain to you the policies of New York. We cooperate with, I know you're just trying to.
You do not. Specifically, ICE was told not to detain this individual, and he burned a woman alive on the New York subways in Kathy Hochul's New York. So I will keep on going. What about Raymond Rojas Basilio? Do you know who that is?
I'm going to tell you our overall policy, which will address all this.
I'll tell you who that is. He is an illegal who molested an 11-year-old in our state because, again, of your sanctuary state policies. This illegal was shielded from federal immigration enforcement and able to commit this heinous crime. And what about Wilson Castillo-Diaz? Do you know who that is?
I'm telling you this. We do cooperate fully with ICE in criminal prosecution. Our sanctuary
You're not advocating for these victims.
Only deal
this is a 5-year-old who was raped on Long Island in Nassau County. You are not advocating on behalf of these victims. You are shielding illegals. Even in your opening statement, you prioritize putting illegals first.
That is not
Rapes of young girls, beatings of NYPD cops by illegals who are here under Kathy Hochul's failed policies, burning New Yorkers alive. This is Kathy Hochul's New York. It's one of the many reasons why you're hemorrhaging support from hardworking New York
These are
families.
horrific crimes, and they're heartbreaking.
They're horrific crimes that are committed on your watch. You signed this executive order on your first day in office. You signed it again and again this January. We deserve a governor who stands up for law-abiding New Yorkers, doesn't put illegals first, but actually puts New Yorkers first. I appreciate
Rather than going after the viral moment, I suggest you look at the facts.
I'm standing up for New Yorkers. Rather than addressing the illegals in New York, you are prioritizing your far-left sanctuary state policies, which you put in place with executive orders. Instead of advocating for victims of 5-year-old who was raped, you did not. They were released because of sanctuary state policies in New York State. No amount of words is going to clean up your failed record and these horrific crimes committed in sanctuary state that you created. And with that, I yield back.
Your representation, the facts are absolutely false.
Yields back.
Absolutely
Chair recognizes Ms. Norton.
Now, what was interesting about that clip, and we've both worked in television, Jason, is that while she was having her feet held to the fire, she moved her arm over to the side and pressed a button. And that was her emergency out button. And suddenly, when it was getting, really heated, suddenly we go to like the broadcast screen and she's not on camera anymore because she doesn't want that around historically. And they've got no argument. Day one, they signed that because it was part of a larger agenda driven by the Democrats. The Democrats are the worst losers in living memory. In fact, they refuse to lose. So what happens is when they lose and a Republican like Trump comes in, it could be anyone, what they will do is they will then engage in what is effectively pockets of civil war around America that are framed because we don't want a king in Trump, or we don't like the way you're dealing with the migrants. There's all this virtue signaling. It's unfair. It's racist. It's not DEI. It's all a lie. The reason they're kicking up all this fuss is because they're all bitter and twisted that they lost the election. Of course you lost the election. You destroyed a country. In fact, Joe Biden managed to destroy it in 6 months. And then it held on by the skin of its teeth for the rest of his administration, which we now find out wasn't his administration because someone was just stamping pages with an auto pen. And I wouldn't be surprised, Jason, if the person who was stamping pages with an auto pen was someone from the Soros family. So if you're going to have a peaceful protest about no kings in Australia, it's good in America, it's good you put an S on there. No kings, because we're not just talking about one king, are we? There's a couple of kings floating around America, and they're the ones you really need to worry about.
So with that, and thank you for saying it. Let's put it all together for you. This chap, walking, works it all out and explains the whole reason why the immigration business is what it is. Take a look.
So do you want to know what all this craziness in LA is really about? The riots, the organized protests, and the current chaos unfolding in the sanctuary city known as Los Angeles? Well, it's not organic, and it's definitely not random. It's actually a calculated move by the leftist ruling class to protect the one thing that keeps them in power: census-based political control. You see, House seats and electoral votes aren't based on how many citizens live in a state, just how many people are counted in that state, and that includes illegal aliens. They are counted as well. So when over 10 million plus flood across the border into blue states like New York and California over the last 4 years, it's not about compassion, it's about math. More bodies equals more power in Congress. But now, mass deportations and people fleeing these blue states are threatening that math. For every 740,000 illegal aliens that are deported from a blue state is one congressional seat in 2030. And if that trend continues, the DNC just doesn't lose votes, they lose control, and likely for good. This is why they would burn a city down like LA to stop Trump. This is why we're seeing the panic. Media hysteria to stop deportations, state-level obstruction to protect population counts, protests and riots like we're seeing in LA designed to bait the feds and flip the narrative. This was never about human rights or compassion. They don't care about you. They don't care about your safety. They only care about control and power. It's political survival, and the census is the real battlefield. Let me know what you think in the comments and hit that follow.
I'll tell you what I think. I think they did the same in Australia.
Of course, this is what I was saying about America, right? Is that it leads the pathway, and then we have to follow. But we've all been following the lefties. We went through Clinton with the various different changes that went through there, through Obama, and we had the threat of Hillary. And then Trump comes along and upsets the apple cart and represents America first. This is what we mean by nationalism versus globalism. This is all about globalism, but it's to create eternal power, of which they will never lose. Now, at the same time,
how bad are you as a political party that you would need to bring in millions of new people to like you into a country to even have a shot in hell? Right? Because all the people who actually do live in that country, or who you supposedly serve as a public servant, have seen through you. The emperor's got no clothes on, right? They've seen you naked running down the street and your doodles out, and they know, you know what? They're no good for this country. They're no good for the people of this country. So the only way you can try and win is to bring them in. I mean, how gangster are those tactics? It's like we're watching an episode of The Sopranos, Jason. You know, these Democrats have, like, as a party, the Democrats have to go, because if the threads lead back, and it leads back to members of the Democratic Party, and we know it does, you know, the Clintons, Pelosi, Eric Swalwell, you know, all of them, then surely there is a rot inside that Democratic Party that needs to go. It can't just be Republican and Democrat forever. It's like, are we going to vote the gangsters, or are we going to vote the conservatives? That's the option at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for balance, with a couple of clips to go, I want to play you now Mayor of New York, Eric Adams, who gave an unexpected response, and I think it really provides the balance for Democrats who are going to, well, not watch what we're saying and, you know, argue, you know, whatever. Eric Adams puts it together for you.
Mayor, I want to ask you about the city council pushing for an investigation into whether the NYPD has shared sealed records with ICE, what could be a violation of local law. Can you confirm whether the NYPD or any other local agency is collaborating with federal immigration enforcement?
We've made it clear over and over again that we will not collaborate with any agencies when it comes to civil enforcement. The law does not allow us to do that. But we will collaborate when it comes down to criminal enforcement. And it's unfortunate that the city council chooses to use their power to find out if there's any collaboration, instead of really advocating for going after those who commit serious crimes, acts of violence, not only on New Yorkers, but also on migrants and asylum seekers, forcing women into prostitution, selling drugs, shooting at police officers, assaulting individuals. Our focus should be on protecting innocent New Yorkers. We're not collaborating with anyone when it comes down to civil enforcement. But I said this before and I'm saying it again. ICE is not a criminal organization. It's a federal law enforcement organization like our other federal partners, and we will use them to protect innocent people in this city.
That's what Hochul was meant to do, but pretended that she wasn't doing. So that's Mayor Eric Adams on the outer. The Democrats went after him, but he provides the necessary nuance about what's really going on there.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, it's just extraordinary times in America. And, we used to think here in Australia that if they could right the ship in America, that would have an effect here. We hoped it would have an effect here. But basically, they don't allow the Republicans to have an administration. That's what happens. So when the Democrats get into power, they do all they can to buy in their votes. They don't care about law and order. They don't care about public safety. In Australia, they're not caring about your property prices or your income and all that kind of stuff. They don't care. And they just trash the place for their own benefit. It's a crime scene. What Trump is in the administration of is a Biden Democrat crime scene. And here they come again with more crime scenes. They're creating more crime scenes. And so they have to spend all of, what's he doing? What's Trump been doing in the first few months? He's been having to undo and pick away the crime scene. And that is so exhausting and so time consuming that, they should be enjoying how to make Americans' lives better, how to fix the economy. If they need to restructure the banking system, then do it honestly. Don't do it with a pharmaceutical rollout so that you've got less problems to worry about. And I just think it's appalling. And these are the people that we put our faith in. These are the people that are highly paid. Look at Anthony Albanese, just gave himself another 14 or 16,000 K pay rise here in Australia, up to $622,000 a year for what? To stand there and lie to us, the liar in chief, to go and get his orders from Brussels. It's not good enough. These people are not fit for purpose. Many of them are not sworn into the actual roles that they tell us that we're paying them for. And they're doing the bidding of these corporations who then act like they're our new gods. We're in a really, really bad place. And if they think that it's going to get better with a one world government and that we're going to have no police, we're just going to have a surveillance state and all these robots and drones, and you're going to get fined for breathing, fined for walking, fined for driving, fined for eating, fined for all the decisions you make and things you say on social media. If they think genuinely, these people, most of them are dead, Kissinger and George Bush Sr., if they think that kind of one world government would make things better, even for them, it won't. Because you can't exist as billionaires, as the wealthy, in forcing people to become customers, bringing people in and heaving in new voters. They are literally presiding over Armageddon, and they don't care. So now it's proved to me, as an ordinary person down on the ground, these people are not the best and brightest among us. These are desperate people. These are animals backed into a corner who will do anything. They will burn it to the ground so that they can preside over the ashes. That's who these people are.
Not disagreeing with a single word. I support everything you just said, and this is what's happening here. So I find that interesting because for many, the President of the United States is the head of government and he's the head of state. The head of state of Australia is technically, the Governor General, but it's the King is our head of state. So in the United States, the President is actually the Prime Minister and the King. Dare I say it, no kings, but in actual fact he is. Trump goes a step further because he is upsetting the globalists, and it's almost it's an alliance, but really nothing happens unless Trump leads the pathway. That's why he's so impressive to me. And of course, people will get their nose out of joint, and the anti-Trumpers on both sides. And there's always something that's going to get you upset. And Palantir, the AI instrument that someone sent it to me this morning, like, you send me an article on Palantir saying, and no comment. And so I am left to interpret what this is. So this is an AI instrument that apparently the US government signed a deal with this AI whatever to surveil. Okay.
Well, I'm not happy about that, but I wouldn't be surprised if Trump's getting involved with an organization like that so that he can find out what the Democrats are planning and have been up to, right? Because is this the evidence that we need? Look, you don't need a Palantir style, what's it called? Intelligence asset. That's what this is. It's an intelligence gathering asset for us. For what? Talking about politics, having our freedom of speech, because someone sold a car for cash for $5,000 once. That's not why you pay millions and billions of dollars for a system like Palantir. Maybe it's so. Well, I would hope it would be used. This is the thing. All of these instruments need to be used for good, and I fear they will be used for evil, because if the Democrats found a way to engineer or cheat their way back in, right? And then they had their hands on Palantir because they were running the administration. That's the concern, you see, because they will only use it for one thing: to imprison you, to criminalize you, and to enrich themselves financially from you, because that's what they do. They're a greedy monster, and they're feeding off you, the general public. And Trump warned us about that once. But in the hands of someone who might use it for good, might it not be a good way to find out who's who in the zoo? I mean, for me, it's pretty obvious. I don't feel like I need Palantir. I think it's pretty obvious who the bad guys are. But I am worried about Palantir. I'm worried about all this technology, Jason, as you know. I mean, for God's sake, I just asked AI about the Waltons and George Soros, and they thought I was talking about the TV show. I mean, these things are only as smart as their programmers, and their programmers are, worrying individuals. So I can see why that person sent it to you. Don't be too upset. I think it is something that we're going to look at. I'll do some more research on Palantir and try and find out what's going on. I don't think there's much we can do about it. And I'm not someone that wants to lay down and die and say, oh yeah, complete loss of privacy, I'm fine with it. No, I'm not fine with it. I'm not fine being governed by any corporation, and Palantir is a corporation just like anyone else. So if Palantir steps up and tries in any way to govern your lives as an innocent person, to contract with you or to expect you to contract with them, they've already broken the law, because you're not a corporation, you're an individual, right? So don't worry too much about these instruments, because there are laws in place, right? They can't change those laws. It is unlawful for a corporation to try and contract with an individual. There you go.
Now, to further add another perspective, we only saw this week Elon Musk and the, let's call it the fake fight with Donald Trump that allowed for Democrats to then call for the instant release of the Epstein files because Musk accused Trump of being in them. So it was a reverse tactic. Trump, in the Big Beautiful Bill, has said that no one will be able to play with the AI development except for the federal government for 10 years, which is interesting. So he might think that he's got 10 years in power to be able to do so. We also knew that Elon Musk warned the Congress years ago that development of AI was too fast and they needed to have some checks and balances in place, to which they ignored. They assumed that they were going to keep government and therefore would be able to do what they do. So that supports the argument that you just made. Now, knowing that the Democrats will sabotage anything when they feel like that there's a revenge play, I found it interesting that we only reported this story this week. The complete collapse bombshell report into AI accuracy indicates your job is probably safe for now. So this is a big report done by Apple. My point being, it makes sense now that the Democrats and all of their corporate masters will do their very best to sabotage said AI in the process.
Good
so
one,
now
Jason.
it starts to make sense, doesn't it, the why he is doing Palantir. Now, also, Sam Altman is a mortal enemy of Elon Musk, and Elon Musk was the best friend of Trump, it seemed. And who does Trump wheel out almost immediately to head up the $500 million investment in AI? But Sam Altman in front of Elon Musk. So bringing it to the surface, there is a way that this needs to be played out. And I just find it fascinating. So that's my point there. And we watch as we always do. Now, because we're getting to the end and we've had the longest show we've ever done, I am going to tell you this bit here. This is Pierre Poilievre. So we now learn that major breaking news out of the UN report reveals Canada is the global hub for refugees. Canada was the second largest resettlement country globally, welcoming 49,000 refugees in 2024, and it granted permanent residency to 27,400, more than any other country. So Poilievre, who was poised to become the next Prime Minister of Canada until he did everything wrong, almost sabotaging his entire campaign, here he is yesterday, Opposition Leader out of office, waiting for a by-election to get back in. Listen to his remarks now on immigration. What a turn for the books.
She's absolutely right. We need to get the money back for taxpayers.
What do you make of the border security bill that was tabled last week, Bill C2? You haven't offered your views on it. Can you give us?
Well, we support a stronger border. We want severe limits on population growth to reverse the damage the Liberals did to our system. The population has been growing out of control. Our borders have been left wide open. This has caused the free flow of drugs, human trafficking, illegal migration, and much worse. And that is why we want a stronger border. We want to crack down on abuses in the immigration system. And we want to ensure that that any frauds in the refugee system are reversed. Those are the things we're looking at. But we're also going to study the bill carefully to make sure that, long-standing Canadians who are following the law are not having their rights and freedoms violated. Thank you.
How about that?
And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Just because, look, Palantir and all of this AI, the Democrats know these are weapons of war. But more than, you see, Democrats would use it as a weapon of war against us to enrich themselves. But if it's a weapon of war against someone who wants to use it against a political enemy, then they could be in trouble. Now, listen, I know this Indian air crash thing is an evolving situation, but I've just been sent, and I'll try and show you a picture of that plane that has been publicized by the Indian media sitting on top of that building. And people in India are quite freaked out because there was an advert that showed exactly the same thing. You know, where this creepy thing happens with like the Simpsons and Trump coming down the escalator. And that exact picture was on an ad for something in India, and people are going, hang on, something's not right. So we don't know because it's an evolving situation, but that picture's available online now as well.
Yeah, really interesting. Well, out of all of that, so if Poilievre turns around and the immigrant story is brought to the surface and all the great greenies are losing their minds, and as they always do, the one proof in the pudding who has turned a country around, and of course he's going to get his critics, and there's always one, but he did this wrong, whatever. It doesn't matter that you do 5,000 things right. There's always some tosser on social media, this keyboard warrior, that does it. So I saw it today. But anyway, here it is. I'm going to bring him up now for you. The wonderful, brilliant Javier Milei. Love him. Yeah. Love the haircut. Looks like a werewolf. Argentina's economy exit recession in milestone for Javier Milei. GDP expanded in the third quarter as long-running costs begin to ease. There's the inflation.
Good
Gone.
God.
Right? Deficits ended after 123 years. Let me read you some of the results that Javier Milei has been able to do. He didn't just promise change, he prepared for a siege. He created a ministry of deregulation led by Federico Sturzenegger with one mission: tear down every law, cartel and rule propping up Argentina's economic decline. The results were immediate. Removing import licenses cut appliance prices by 35%. Ending rent control tripled housing supply in Buenos Aires. Deregulating yerba mate dropped prices by 25%. Repealing airline restrictions slashed travel costs. They brought real prices down. He abolished hereditary public jobs. He allowed Starlink to offer satellite internet. He ended perks for the state airline monopoly. He opened the skies to foreign competitors. These were tectonic shifts. Poverty reduced from 49% to 38%. Child poverty reduced by 1.7 million. Monthly inflation from 25% per month to 2.7%. Wages rising above inflation. Public accounts first surplus in decades. IMF predicts 5.5% growth in 2025 and 2026. He didn't just stabilise Argentina. He offered a new path for the developing world. Don't wait for socialism to collapse. Dismantle it deliberately, publicly and fast. He proved free markets work when politicians get out of the way. The point is, stop believing these people are going to create the problem and then get you out of it. And the best part is, he ain't a politician. Trump isn't a politician. I think we need less politicians and more real people in public office to be able to get there once and for all. That is the story of Javier Milei that just goes from strength to strength. It's pretty impressive.
Have you fangirled enough over Javier Milei now? I know I do as well. I'm the same. I think he's fantastic as well. And I actually like his crazy hair. I'm asking my husband to grow his hair crazy like Javier Milei. And he's like, what? I think we do have people that can do that. I know former Senator Gerard Reddick. He's really good with money and finance, and he has a big finance plan for Australia. And he might not dip his feet into all the issues, although he's gone big after the vaccine rollout and net zero. He's been brave and talked about lots of issues. But it's about, will these people ever be allowed to roll out their knowledge and their prowess when it comes to financial stuff? Well, probably not, because there is so much pork around these things. We showed earlier that $180,000 fee for changing a logo. While people are still on the gravy train of our money with government, they're never going to let someone come in and make things better. Right. And so, as it says at the beginning of this show, Marco Savio, God bless him, rest in peace. What an absolute, what's the term for him? He was a fire of life, that Marco Savio. I'm glad he had a long life as well. We put our bodies on the gears and the machinery of this, and we say that if we're not going to be free, then we're going to prevent it from working. And it doesn't matter what mechanisms come in. You need to be reassured with AI, Palantir, all of these mechanisms, intelligence, surveillance, data collection, all of that. We haven't agreed to it all. So I think somewhere down the track, there's going to be some kind of consent required. I already said no to a banking app because it wanted to go into my other apps. When you do updates, you need to check these things. When you join social media, you need to check these things. But if you're a law-abiding citizen, and as a conservative, I've always advocated for law-abiding citizens, and I'm talking the real laws, not the bullshit council bylaws that actually aren't, they're not allowed in your constitution anyway. The real laws: if you don't steal, you don't harm, you don't rape, you don't kill, you don't kidnap, right? Those laws, the laws that they've broken, because conspiracy is one of the ones that you're not allowed to do as well, then you should be able to live a free life. We've got to stop being price gouged with levies, which are just extra taxes. And we've got to make sure that doesn't happen. We've got to shame them into it. How can someone like Anthony Albanese be earning $622,000 a year to be the liar in chief when they're saying they're so broke they have to take money off farmers who already just break even? These people are a joke. They're saying farmers for net zero can't dig down more than 18 centimeters because heritage, and it was, Aboriginals once had a smoking ceremony on it. Toorak is an Aboriginal name. Toorak means muddy ditch, right? In Indigenous terms. I walked through Toorak the other day because I went to my favorite restaurant, Romeo's. They have subterranean garages that have been dug out 15 meters deep in Toorak. Right, in Toorak, because they're all barristers and lawyers and judges and magistrates. So you can dig out a subterranean garage, but we can't dig out low enough to grow some potatoes. Get a life. You people are a bunch of liars. You've taken it too far. There was a line in the sand, and this pandemic has showed that you are prepared to go over that line. You're lying to us about health. You're lying to us about what makes a good immune system and how we can survive germs and diseases. You're lying to us about the climate hoax. We can see it. We're not buying it anymore. We know it's your new OPEC and it's your new oil, but you're going to have to toddle off and find another one like running the economy honestly and properly for profit. That we'd get behind. We wouldn't stop you mining. We wouldn't stop you selling resources overseas as long as you're not price gouging the old Australians who own those resources to do it. We need good government, decent government, proper government in this country. And I just hope I live long enough to see it, Jason. Sorry about the long show today, everyone.
Sorry about it. I think it's the alternative. It's not even 2 hours. Come on. I tell you what, it's got to be the best 100 minutes that you're going to get of news anywhere around the country today. And it, of course, becomes valid all weekend. Please catch up, share, like, comment, do all of those things that help out with the algorithm as we go from strength to strength. Please keep warm over the weekend, and may the rain gods stay away so the kids can get at least one soccer game in this season. That's what I'm asking for.
Don't be selfish. We need the rain. Go out and do rain dances. The farmers are desperate. Although they tell me
south.
They tell me it's too late now because this is not grass growing season and they needed it for their animals anyway. It's a disaster. Another thing that governments shouldn't control, the weather. So thank you so much for joining us on this Friday the 13th. Do be careful when you're out and about today. I don't know if you're suspicious or not. I'm a little bit suspicious. I don't walk under ladders, but that's probably quite wise. I'd end up with a pot of paint on my head or something. Have a fantastic weekend. It's not a long weekend, so Jason and I will be back doing this for you all over again on Monday.